In Glen Rose, Texas, south of Dallas, that's where Dr. Ball's museum is, south of Fort Worth, they've got a river running through town called the Paluxy River. Back in 1908, the river flooded, and it got so bad it ripped off the bottom of the river, which was solid limestone, sort of like concrete almost. It ripped off a 2-foot layer of limestone and moved it 20 miles downstream. Underneath was another layer of limestone, so it's no big deal. But that layer underneath had contained hundreds of dinosaur footprints. They actually made a state park out of it. I've got the book right here, Dinosaur Valley State Park. If you want to come take a look at some of the pictures. They chiseled out lots of the tracks because they knew erosion would tear them up over the next 20, 30 years, would destroy them. They moved a lot of the tracks to museums. They cut out big blocks of stone and moved them and set them up under dinosaur skeletons. So it looks like the dinosaur just walked there. Some of the tracks are pretty big. Here's a kid taking a bath in one. Right next to the dinosaur tracks, frequently they found human footprints. Roland Bird was in charge of the group of guys digging out the tracks, and he reported there were 15 to 20 inch long, clearly defined human footprints with the dinosaur tracks. Human tracks and dinosaur tracks together? Hundreds of dinosaur track sites have been found around the world. Finding dinosaur tracks is not that unusual. Many have been found. There's some in Holyoke, Massachusetts, some in Connecticut. They found Colorado on Red Rock Amphitheater's got a bunch of dinosaur tracks. But human tracks with dinosaur tracks have been found a few times. There's some pictures here if you want to see a trail of human tracks crossing a trail of dinosaur tracks. This is the Taylor Trail from Glen Rose, Texas. I've been there 4 times. Talked to many folks who studied it. Carl Ball lives there, studied it avidly. People say, how can you have human tracks together? Well, one of the best human tracks still had the dermal ridges. I mean, like the fingerprints on the toes. You could see them. They were extremely clear for the first few months. And once it gets exposed, it starts to dry out and weather, and pretty soon it starts to become a little less clear, and then pretty soon it's nothing but an oval. There's a good book about it called Texas Tracks and Artifacts if you want to get more information on the human and dinosaur tracks together. We sell castings of one of the human tracks. It's a size 24. Check our catalog. You can get one of those for hang on your wall in your office. That'll start a conversation. You can steer that conversation toward creation. We had a kid with a size 18 tried to fill up our 24 track, couldn't quite do it. They chiseled out some of the rock ledges and said, we think the tracks are fake, some of the skeptics did. When they removed the rock, they found more tracks underneath the undisturbed limestone. And they said, okay, who made these tracks anyway, under the rock here? They sawed one of the tracks across the toes. Looking at it endways, you could see there were depressions where the toes had squeezed the mud down, distorting the lamination lines. These are not carved in, they're not erosion marks, they're compression prints, quite obviously. There's much more on that on the website omniology.com. The man's stride between steps was about 6 or 7 feet. I would rip my britches every time trying to do that. How do you get human tracks and dinosaur tracks together? Well, one preacher, he's assistant pastor in Arizona, he wrote me a letter. He said, Brother Hovind, I grew up in Glen Rose, Texas. He said, I went on an excavation with Dr. Carl Ball. We were out there digging up these footprints, and Nova was there to film the dig. He said, there was an evolutionist who had been arguing with Dr. Ball the entire time. Nova didn't film much of the tracks or the dig, but they did interview the evolutionist. He told them he had not seen anything there to disprove evolution. What he didn't tell the camera was he had refused to even turn around and look at the tracks we were working on. When they found some tracks, they would say, sir, would you video this? No, I don't want to see it. He wouldn't even look at it. He stood with his back to the tracks and the dig while making the statements. Nova knew the man had not looked at the tracks, but did not report that, nor did they give Dr. Ball equal airtime to respond. You see, folks, evolution is not part of science. It's a religion, and they defend their worldview with religious fervor and zeal. If it was real science, it would be open to all observations, but they totally, purposely discredit anything that goes against their theory. One guy said, well, maybe there was a dinosaur with feet like a human. That explains these tracks here. Oh, you never know. Could have been,